AsiaLink's webinar this afternoon, Ensuring Equity Within Digital Innovation. My name is Martine Letts and I am the Group CEO of AsiaLink. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are all dialing in from today. For me, that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. I pay respects to elders past and present, and to all First Nations people whose land we will be discussing today in this webinar. Just a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. The webinar will be recorded. If you have any questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A function, and we will endeavour to answer as many questions as possible at the end of each session. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce today's moderator, Kate Pounder. Kate is an experienced tech policy expert and senior executive who has worked across the public, private and non-profit sectors. She is currently CEO of the Tech Council of Australia, the peak body representing the Australian tech sector. Before her time in consulting, she spent 15 years working in technology policy roles with the Australian Industry Group, National ICT Australia, Network 10 and the federal government. Kate is passionate about growing Australia's tech sector, creating new jobs and businesses, and helping all Australian businesses make the most of tech adoption. And Kate is also an AsiaLink Business Advisory Council member, so one of the AsiaLink family, which is particularly wonderful to have her here as the moderator. Kate, over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to AsiaLink for organising this fabulous webinar today. I can see we just have some people joining us now, which is excellent. I think this is such a timely topic because we know that technology is shaping so many different aspects of our life, from our economy to the jobs we do, to the products we buy, to the way we solve the world's really big problems, from climate change to different forms of inequities. And we also know, though, that technology isn't equally shared when it comes to gender. So we know that women tend to be underrepresented as founders of companies. They are underrepresented in technological jobs, and that means they're underrepresented in shaping and designing those companies and those products of the future. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And we are so fortunate to be joined by an amazing panel that has direct experience in each of these areas. And it's a very timely topic because we are recognising and celebrating International Women's Day, which was obviously last week, but that theme from International Women's Day was around crack code, and it was specifically this changing technological world. How do we ensure that more women are represented and more women are taking leadership roles and fully participating? So I want to firstly start by briefly introducing the panelists, and then I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves in their own words and also tell you one key fact about themselves that you wouldn't discover from looking at the LinkedIn profiles. So our fabulous panel is Aiza Shamsal Baharin, who is the President of the Women's Entrepreneurs Network of Malaysia and also the Director and Consultant to BNI Malaysia. We have Wendy Chen, the Founder and CEO of OmniStream, and we have Jeanette Tia, the CEO and Founder of HEX. And so I might throw to you first to give us a more fulsome introduction.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Aiza, and I'm from Malaysia. So I run a fintech called MadCash, and what we do is we fund women entrepreneurs, so especially those who are in the micro sectors. So that's what I do, and I'm so happy to be here today.
Thank you. And what is one fact about you, Aiza, that we wouldn't know from looking at any of your profiles?
So I think it's more like I found that my journey in entrepreneurship, that it's serendipity, right? So because of the pandemic, we found a way that we can help the ladies in our community to come back, after the pandemic, and then that's how my fintech started to be, and it grew bigger than anything else I've ever done in my life. So I thought, from calamity, something good happens.
I think that's a wonderful message and a wonderful theme, and I love to hear a bit more about that later on the panel. Wendy, I'll invite you to introduce yourself now.
Hello, so I'm Wendy. I'm the founder of OmniStream. OmniStream, we help grocery stores, convenience chains automate their planning. So every single store looks different and it has the perfect assortment for its neighborhood with our automated technology. My background, I'm an engineer by training, worked on Wall Street for many years, did angel investing, and then did the entrepreneurship thing. So I had a whole reverse career. Now, I think one thing you wouldn't notice from looking at my LinkedIn is that I'm a semi-pro aerial acrobat. I had so much like angst and energy from doing this whole Wall Street thing and then, doing this whole entrepreneurship thing. So that's kind of how I take it out.
That is amazing, and I only wish this was something we were doing physically in person so that we could invite you to demonstrate those skills next time. And Jeanette.
Hi everyone, and so nice to be here. Happy International Women's Month, I guess. It seems to get bigger every single year. My name is Jeanette Chia. I'm the CEO and co-founder of an education technology company called HEX, that's spelled H-E-X. We're all about empowering the next generation of leaders, founders, technologists, and we do it through entrepreneurial and innovation programs that go from, I guess, upper high school across the gap year and into universities. And really our thinking is that there's a foundational knowledge that needs to exist that doesn't currently exist in education to really help to drive, a different kind of leader. I want a different kind of person stepping up at the top of tech, business and government. And the only way we're going to do that is by educating and empowering a fresh generation, a fresh population. So in terms of the thing that people might not be able to tell from my LinkedIn profile, two very quick things. One is that I used to do a gingerbread demolition fundraising event where we'd build giant gingerbread houses and smash them for charity, so that with baseball bats, not a COVID safe activity. And the second thing is that I actually am training to do like a weightlifting like mini comp. So I'm like learning how to be a strong girl and lift heavy things. So, because balancing a business on my shoulders isn't enough. We need to now also be able to squat heavy loads.
I'm really impressed with your athleticism.
That's the only thing I can do.
A theme around the panel. Obviously, when we talk about having strong women in tech, you have taken that incredibly literally. So that's good to hear. I'm going to start now with some questions for the panel. And then what we'll do is we'll have a few questions for the panel. And then we'd really encourage anyone in the audience who has a question themselves to post it in the Q&A. And then we'll kind of hand over to those questions. But Wendy, I'm going to start with you. What excited you about founding a company and working in tech? And do you think we need more women to do both?
Sorry, once a Zoom call, that has to happen. Well, wow, becoming a founder, like if I knew how hard it was before I started, maybe I would have thought about it like a little bit harder. But what excited me was just the ability to learn a lot more about everything, right? Because as a founder, you really have to do everything. It's fundraising, leadership, management, hiring, HR, like everything. So it was a really quick way to learn what I didn't know and try to see if I could push myself that much harder. I also really love like the engineering background, right? I just love like bringing things into existence. So working on Wall Street, working in trading, it doesn't have that same sense of like bringing a product to life that people can use, that you can see in the wild. So I think that's what made me the most excited about building this business. Now, the second question is actually more interesting. So do we need more women to be founders? Do we need more women to be in tech? I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm going to say we need more women to be able to have the choice to pursue whatever it is that they want to pursue or whatever it is that they're like right for. So if they want to be founders, I definitely think that we should support the right women to be founders. What I've realized after trying to mentor, various founders or various people, not everyone should be a founder, right? There's a lot of people who would make like great directors or employee number one or great product managers. So if like we need to encourage women to get into like the head of product or the head of engineering at an early stage startup, like that's equally profound. So I think, yeah, definitely, what does it take to actually make the space more comfortable so that women can do whatever it is that they should be doing? You're on mute.
What do you think are the benefits if we get more women into tech, whether it's at the founder level or in those other roles?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's quite fair to stereotype, but like the women that I worked with, a lot of them tend to be higher empathy. They're able to de-escalate situations. These are valuable skill sets to have in a really high-paced, like stressful environment. They also tend to have grit. I mean, there's a lot of men with grit too. You know, the women who are in tech, that grit is so important. Everything is already hard enough. So bringing in some of those soft skills and the ability to actually like get things done from like A to Z, right? Follow through. So like from a company perspective, I think there are a lot of benefits. There's also just different ideas. I think diversity is always a hard thing, right? Because like it's too easy to just say diversity and gender diversity and whatever whatever you can see, but how do you actually get diversity in ideas and diversity in backgrounds? So there's some really interesting things that people with different backgrounds have thought of that I would never have thought of. So yeah, like it's actually a challenge, I think, for founders to go beyond just checkboxes, but to think about like real diversity.
Now we can't hear you at all, Kate. No luck, sorry.
Yeah, I might just, if you like, I could step in if you like and ask the next question while Kate's finding her voice again. Sorry, Kate, you just nod and let me know if you're happy for me to do that. Yeah, so I think the next question was going to be to Jeanette. There's a big focus right now on raising capital and investment in tech. What has been your experience with this? In general, what barriers have you faced to founding a company and raising capital, and how important was gender relative to others? There's a lot of questions here. And then finally, what can we do to make it easier for female entrepreneurs to found companies?
It's a really great question. And I mean, I think, you know, both Wendy and Isa have some great insight here as well about what it's like to fundraise, especially having come from the investment side. But for us, I mean, we bootstrapped our company for the first few years. So that was all about building a sustainable business until it kind of got to the point where it was like, I needed to accelerate our growth. I needed to accelerate our mission. And I think a lot of the things I say about founding a company is that timing is so crucial. And if you miss that timing, there's, you know, you might as well have not bothered in the first place, right? So for us, we decided that if there was ever a time to mess and challenge with higher education, it was around the time of the pandemic. And we ended up raising our first small seed of 1.45 mil Australian in 2021. So that was a really interesting challenge. And I think similar to what Wendy said, you just don't know what you don't know. And I'm a really big proponent of when you talk about bringing women into tech and women into entrepreneurship, sometimes we think we need to be very technical or we need to be very good at commercials or whatever it might be, but you don't have to be a chef to work in a restaurant, right? You need front of house, you need the host, you need the people who are going to draw the writing on the menu board, you need the people designing the logos. So I think if you think about the tech industry as a whole, you could be all sorts of different roles within the tech industry that don't necessarily require coding and don't necessarily require the ability to fundraise. So I'm just sort of putting that out there to see if perhaps there's a, you know, could be a broader audience out there thinking, oh, maybe that's not for me. But when it comes to actually, you know, being a woman fundraising, we know that a disproportionate of funds go to non-women-led businesses. That is black and white facts, that there is a startup funding gap for sure. They say that less than 2% of VC funding goes to women-only led startups, and about 30-ish% of funding goes to startups with at least one woman founder. And I just think that that's a real shame, because we know that women-led businesses, it's not a charity. We're actually really capital efficient. We make outsized impact for people's portfolios. So I would really love to see that changing. And I guess from an experience perspective, I never like to think that it's my fault. I never like to think that it's the system's fault if I can't do something, because my mum raised me to say, Jeanette, you can do anything, and that's how it goes. But sometimes when I do compare my experience to my male peers who are in a similar industry, have a similar sized business, the kinds of questions that we get asked are very different. The kinds of encouragement we get are very different. And I think just being aware of that from a systemic perspective helps you as a woman founder go, well, okay, I understand the environment I'm operating in. I can push myself through it, or I can do some positive self-talk and go to the next stage. So I don't know if I hit all of the questions there, Martine, but I think I hit most of them.
Yes, you did. And a quick follow-up before I go to Isa. There is, of course, in all of the professions, also a strong network of women peers who can support one another.
100%.
Is that something that that you have been a part of, or that exists, or that might be a way of providing another sort of platform for exchanging stories and ideas and support?
Yeah,
Yes,
think that,
Isa, over to you, sorry.
sorry, go ahead, Janet. Add on.
Then you, Isa,
I'll
you're
continue after you, yeah.
the next.
Is that one for me?
Yeah, you're finished.
Okay. One of the very first things I did before becoming a founder was actually joined this group of women called, and excuse my language, Like-Minded Bitches Drinking Wine. That was actually the name of the group. It was a Facebook group. And it was basically a group of entrepreneurial women who just wanted to talk about business. So I ended up helping to kind of curate some events for them and doing a bunch of meetups and things like that. And I have to say 100%, the crew that you surround yourself with in terms of building your business and where you're at, it's so important. And so I would highly recommend anyone going on this journey, as Wendy said, it is difficult. Find some people who you can vent to, who are a few steps ahead of you. I promise everyone's really generous, even if they're busy, because they want to see more of us succeed.
Great, thanks. That's a great answer. So now, Isa, over to you. Mad Cash, one of your new ventures, is a fintech that empowers female micro entrepreneurs in Malaysia. What inspired you to found it, and what pain points to accessing finance and tech were you seeking to address?
So I think during the pandemic, like in Malaysia especially, we had a major lockdown, right? So nobody could do business. So they asked everybody to stay at home. So then what happened was that we had all these women entrepreneurs who maybe they themselves did not realize that they lived on, hand to mouth, that kind of thing. So like when the government said stop business, and then when they wanted to restart again, there's no savings left, there's nothing on the table. So then what we did was that we saw a need. So we just asked our friends, let's donate some money and then let's see if we can help these ladies. But instead of just a donation, it becomes a perpetual fund. So you pay it back so that it goes to another person, because we don't want to always do charity. So we wanted a way where we just empower women so that they just need a little bit of cash flow so that they can grow their business, and then after that give it back so that you can help another person. And then we also saw that it's not just enough to give money, because women do all kinds of stuff. So what they need would be some emotional support, some network support and stuff like that. So we had women who are established leaders in our community come back to help. And I think it was also due to the pandemic, because people had some time on their hands. They could actually spend time on Zoom to talk to someone, to at least listen to things that they could provide feedback on. So this is one of the things where, because I've been running a business for like 17 years, and I've been looking for VCs here and there, but I think I never found a product that really fit the times. What Janet was saying, you have to be at the right time, right place, and the right product. So that was when I got my first very small VC funding, but it was amazing. It's just to have someone validate your idea and feel that, okay, this is something that's worth investing in. So that was like such a, don't give up. It took me 18 years to find something that I thought was good enough.
Yeah, thank you. So it's interesting. I mean, in this area, the pandemic probably was quite an enabler. Our friend, what they always say, out of adversity or was it necessity is the mother of invention. Wendy, next one for you. Unless Kate, can you hear us, or no?
She's not back.
Beg your pardon? She's gone.
Sorry, she came back in and then she's dropped out again. Sorry, Martine.
Wendy, you, as a leader working across multiple markets, How important are local conditions, cultures to enabling more women to found companies, work in tech or adopt tech? And what countries do you think, in your experience, are making the most progress or have some of the really good initiatives?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's almost two sides to this question. The first one is the cultural acceptance at home and amongst your group of friends. And then the second one is structural and at work, right? So the various countries I've lived in, they all have their pros and cons. And you know, the thing I've learned as I've gotten into my 30s is that, hey, you can choose your group of friends, you can choose your own social norms. So, you know, if you have a group of friends that makes it a little bit difficult to be working all the time and, you know, choosing to balance your life one way for a few years instead of another, then you can always choose a different group of friends. You can choose a slightly different society to live in. So yeah, of course, like living in Asia, that skew can, or that pressure can be a little bit different. Oh, anyone who's listening who lives in Asia, like you've heard it, right? Oh, you're in your 20s. Why are you focusing on your career instead of getting married? There's always these kind of fun, like social sides that you have to deal with. So some countries are better than others at that social side of the pressure. But that said, what about like the actual structural work side, right? Are there countries that are a little bit easier to fundraise without certain assumptions? It's hard for me to anecdotally compare because I think I've gotten better at fundraising through the various series. So, you know, we started fundraising in Asia. I wasn't as good at deflecting questions about risk. And then now it's just like nothing, right? So I think it's hard to compare, but there definitely are business differences. I mean, in Australia, we've had some very strong female founders come before us. So maybe that sets the stage a little bit differently. It is, I do have to say though, the fact that I actually operate across so many different countries, it actually has given me enough breadth to actually say, this is what I like about this culture, this is what I like about this culture, and on our company, we're going to take the mishmash of it and just do our best, right? I think the one kind of takeaway that I've had is that it's really about equity rather than equality. So not everybody needs the same thing to be successful. There are some people who need time off between 4 and 6 to go pick up their kids, but they are more than happy to work from 6 to 11 to compensate for it. So like for us, we're just trying to do a better job of understanding what that actually means and what we can do in terms of policy. We also have to have a mindset that, hey, policies have to change between seed stage, Series A, Series B, and Series C. So we're still trying to like coordinate that internally, but the fact that we're transparent about it, I think is also helpful.
Can I ask a supplementary on that? I've just spent 3 weeks traveling around Southeast Asia, and one of the observations about Australian investors is that they're quite risk averse. Would you say, in your experience, that in Asia there is a greater appetite for risk?
I think there are different types of investors in Asia. So you have your traditional family funds, and then you have your CVCs, and then there's a couple of well-known VCs. Our Series A was led by an American investor. So we kind of shopped around and decided we like the Americans the best, but like that was a very special case. I would just advise anyone with a relatively global business, like, why do you care about the nationality of your investors?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Yes. So, thank you. All right. So my next question is back to Jeanette. Jeanette, this is a very long question, but I'll try and break it down. You seem to get the long ones. So we know that women are underrepresented in traditional tech careers and training courses. We already talked about that, especially it would appear in countries like Australia. For example, 24% of people in technical jobs in Australia are women, and they make up just around a quarter of students. So the feeder group also is relatively small. We also know women enter tech jobs differently to men. They're more likely to enter them between the ages of 25 and 30 as a first job after training. So how do you think we can break this dynamic? How important do you think new training models might be? And so to encourage greater diversity of people to choose tech careers and to give people a second chance to break into them?
That is a very nice, meaty question there, Martine. Thank you so much. I think one of the points you made was that women tend to get into tech a bit later in their careers, maybe after they've done a couple of jobs rather than straight out of training, because that pipeline is narrower. And that is definitely true for me. I was trained in economics and sociology and marketing. That was kind of my background. Worked in ANZ Bank in the marketing team and Origin Energy, and all did the corporate thing, did the Asian corporate go work for a bank thing for about 14 years. And it wasn't until I was in my sort of late 20s, early 30s that it was like, oh, actually, I'm now in a technology role and I need to find a bridge in my skills between what I know, which was marketing, and what I needed to know, which was product. And the bridge that I found was UX design, because I'm like, oh, I know what a persona is, and those exist in these two fields. I can draw a bridge mentally and get there. And then now here I am, like with a tech-led business. And I think this pathway is one that I think a lot of people might follow, especially coming out of corporate, and particularly women who might need to gain a little bit more, maybe it's a bit more confidence in themselves to sort of step out and do things. But I really do think that new training models are crucial here. I think the reason my company exists is because we want to put a new layer of training. We want to embed it into upper high school, gap year, and university. We want to see, it's kind of the ABCs of the tech knowledge worker. It's futurist mindsets, tech literacy, global leadership, understanding your position in the world, figuring out your authentic values and how to put that into a business. So we want to see this kind of training emerging, but there's also this new concept of like just-in-time learning. It's very much around, are you the kind of person in your job that if you have a new task, you go, oh, I can't do that because no one trained me? Or will you say, wow, that's a new thing, I'm going to figure out just in time how to make it work? And that kind of thing we call exponential intelligence. So if you think about IQ being how smart you are and EQ being how great you are with people, we think XQ, or exponential intelligence, is a measure of how likely you are to be a leader in the future economy, how likely you are to quickly adapt to a changing world. And so my team's working currently on a set of attributes, so making a little diagnostic for that. And my vision actually is to see something like XQ exist in schools and unis, but also in hiring. We sit in a room and say, we need to hire that person because they've got great EQ. I'd like us to also to say, oh, this team needs more XQ. How do we bring that in? So anyway, that's my little vision on sort of new training models. And for any education nerds in the room, maybe a new pedagogical model. We can talk about that later. But I definitely think that, so my final point on that very meaty question is, there is a risk that sometimes the technology that is seen to be more feminized is underrated. So things like social media, things like creative media, other ways that we engage with communities online, sometimes the industry as a whole underrates the importance of these skills because it tends to be feminized. So I would just say to any woman out there who loves tech and maybe is, doesn't think that being an influencer and making TikToks is actually working in tech. I mean, it's a gateway, right? So anyone who's used an Instagram filter has used augmented reality. So we need to realize that we're already there and to have that confidence to step back into it.
I hear that all the time, that every company is actually now a digital company.
Yes, 100%.
Needs to be in it. Isa, my question to you is related in particular to Malaysia. And so in Malaysia, are women encouraged to be part of the digital innovation agenda? And how does the Women Entrepreneur Network Association actually support this?
It's funny to see the data that we see in our country. When children go to school, I think we see an equal amount of girls and boys taking technical fields. And then for some reason, after they go to university, you see a little bit less. So then for every 2 boys, there'll be 1 girl that takes up a tech. And then but when they do work, you see even less. So only out of 7, only 1 actually practices it. Right, so this is what you see happening, and I'm not sure where the girls go. Either they choose to do something that's not tech specific. Maybe they go into marketing or technical support. So it's not, they don't pursue that. So I think one of the issues that we see is that we need to have more women leaders who are in tech. And then so that they have a role model to aspire to, right? So this is the thing that we see in Malaysia. So what of the role of NGOs in Malaysia like WENA is just to showcase these leaders. So we do things like the Global Mentoring Walk, where we let young people walk with an established leader, and that's more to inspire and to see that there are options in life, and then you could actually be a technical person if you want. Like I'm lucky enough. I studied electrical engineering in school, and then I worked in 2 factories. I worked for Motorola and Nokia, and then but I found my true calling when I did business. So even though I'm technically trained, it may not be something that I truly enjoy until I did my business. So that's the kind of thing. But one thing that I did learn is that having a technical background allows you to think in a different way. You know, it structures your thinking, it structures the way you do it. So, you know, I could be more numbers person than an average founder, just because of the fact of my training. So that's, hopefully I answered the question.
Yes, thank you. So that's perfect. Look, we've got a number of questions down in the chat, but we were a little bit ahead of time. So I haven't notified you about this question, but I think it's a general one and it goes back to Jeanette, your reference to XQ and the word exponential. The rate of technological change and the way in things, you learn something, and then what they talk about, the average number of careers that young people will have is between 15 and 17, because things are just happening so fast. Does the rapidity, talk a bit about how you can manage the challenge of how quickly this field is changing, how quickly the tech is changing, and what are some of the strategies that you've been adopting in terms of kind of staying with the game, if not ahead of the game? Maybe start with you, Wendy.
For me, I guess it's a little bit easy because I'm secretly a giant nerd, right? Like over the weekends, it's not even like a motivation thing. I almost need motivation to like stop working or to stop reading. So I'll just get up and I love reading certain science and technology blogs. I will always keep track of news in quantum physics because I find it interesting. I will read about how large language models work on the translation layer because that's fascinating to me. So I guess if you have nerd brain like me, that type of stuff is really interesting from a conceptual level. And also just the way that I like to build my social network, I also want to find other people who are just as nerdy as me. So they'll always be telling me about all the nerdy projects that they're working on. So for me, it's almost natural. If you told me, oh, I have to be more normal, that would be quite difficult. So it's just about surrounding yourself with people who are interested in interesting things and are a bit weird.
It's pretty normal to me. Isa, have you got any thoughts about keeping up or the challenge of this rapidly changing field?
So I think what I've seen is that because my team consists of mainly programmers, right? So they tend to be comfortable in where they are, right? So sometimes you have to push change in the company. So we used to be part of Nokia. It took us forever to learn Android because we thought Nokia would never fail, right? So it took a long time before we decided. So now we have to I guess your job as a leader in the company is to push your people beyond their comfort zone, because sometimes people just love to be to do what they know best and all that. So you need to always not just look at yourself, but also push your team forward and to see the trends coming up. And to be able to stay on point and to stay relevant in the market, I would say.
I think that's a challenge in every field and endeavor. Thank you. Jeanette.
Yes, I mean, I think this is a really great question because that is the exponential world we live in. Things change at the rate of God knows what, and we've already got ChatGPT 4. 3 just came out a few weeks ago. Is everyone okay? That rate of change, and so this is why when we talk about XQ, we actually think it's not about knowing it's not about knowing how to do a particular thing. Your skills are going to have to change so quickly. It's more about developing a set of capabilities and attitudes that allows you to adapt to the world, whatever's coming down the pipeline, because we can't predict it all the time. And sometimes when it lands, and sometimes when things like, I don't know, a global pandemic just lands on our head, you need people who can rapidly, quickly adopt. You need people curious enough to figure out how new technologies are going to support us. And I even see, there was a question in one of the Q&As around, AI changing in based off bias data. That kind of solving a problem like that, I think, comes down to capabilities like curiosity about AI, interest and self, wanting to seeing your perspective reflected in the world around you. So I think it's capabilities, not necessarily that, but I do recommend doom scrolling on Twitter. I do recommend subscribing to like things like Morning Brew and Hustle newsletters and that kind of thing, because these will just keep you a little bit updated if you like entrepreneurship. And I don't know if you can hear this in the background, but there's Celine Dion playing, so I'm just going to go back on mute.
Thank you. All right, look, we've got quite a few questions now in the Q&A, and I'll try to cover as many as possible. Wendy, from Juliet Nguyen, this is already building on what we just discussed. The marketplace for new digital technologies is constantly evolving. As a business leader, how do you adapt to and ensure business longevity in this changing landscape? Did you want to add anything to your previous answer? And
Yeah,
please, anyone else, feel free to chip in if you've got some thoughts on this.
Yeah, at least at this stage of OmniStream, I feel like my job isn't to say yes, it's actually to say no. We have a certain amount of money and a certain amount of mental bandwidth, right? So it's actually the mental bandwidth that's much more of a constraining factor within a business. There's only so much innovation and training that like an organization can go through at a time. And you don't want to be mediocre at a bunch of things. You need to be really good at whatever your specialty is. So I feel like my job as a leader is to actually figure out what niche we're going to pursue and what we can actually say yes to. So it's almost like focus at this stage. So I've kind of realized seed stage is about saying yes because the opportunities are quite limited. Series A is of kind of refining the focus. And then Series B is just saying no and focusing.
Thank you. Look, I'll just stick with Juliet. Asked another question. This is for you, Isa. Some of the specific challenges faced by women and underrepresented groups in digital innovation, and how can we address those challenges?
So again, I think the pandemic was really a blessing because like if you live in Malaysia, the internet speed is like really challenging, to run a tech company and all that. Like we got everybody to get on Zoom. Right, so that took some effort, and then we have places that because when we run our programs, we run it in many outskirt kind of places. So they had to like actually put their phone on top of a tree just to get the internet. That's how bad some places are, but they still do it because the one thing you find about women is that they have that spirit. They want to do better. They want to earn an income for their families. To support everyone. So I think because of that, they go in there. So it's not. Their goal is not about looking for VCs or investment and all that. It's more about sustaining life and making it better. So I think that's my privilege to work with these ladies because they're so inspirational. Like I wouldn't be able to do what they do, and I just do what I can to help along the way. So it's been an amazing journey for me, I think.
Fantastic. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Renee Lunsman, I think this is a question for the whole panel. When we speak about gender equality, we can't ignore the range of other social identities that influence and affect our individual experiences as women in tech. In your experience as entrepreneurs, which intersectional issues have impacted your own career? How can an increased awareness of issues surrounding intersectionality create better business leaders? Jeanette, do you want to kick off?
Sure can. And I think, as we know, if your feminism isn't intersectional, then your feminism is BS, right? So I'm a big proponent for supporting intersectional inclusivity wherever we absolutely can. And this is everything from neurodiversity, and then we've got some really fabulous like neurodiverse team members in our team, and then it's also just we've got 3 wonderful women of color on this panel, and I think like we've all probably experienced some level of that extra social identity that we've had to overcome. And for me, I think that came from there's a social identity of being a bit quieter, which you probably wouldn't believe now hearing me talk and not shut up. There's also that concept of wanting to people please and be like polite and not upset anybody. There is also this kind of identity of being the person that is always very a little, you're the one who's always generous and giving because that's what's expected of you. So when you do all that kind of stuff, it puts limits around what you can actually achieve because you're focusing on other things. And so, yeah, I definitely think that there's, and I'm going to say this is quite a funny thing, but some of you may have heard of this 40 under 40 influential Asian Australian list, which is lovely. But I remember getting, like when I got the call for that list, and I was like, that feels like a really small niche. I feel really seen and validated. And I sent it to my parents, and I think my LinkedIn post said, "Hey, mum, I'm on a list." And I think, we do have this sense of wanting to make sure our communities are proud of us and make sure our families are proud of us. But that's just some of my stuff, and I'll pass to the panel.
Can I say, that we are a partner in this 40 under 40?
Yes.
An Asian co-initiative.
I know.
I'm very proud of it, and thank you for mentioning it, because it is, and I've only been to one of the celebrations where we could back together again, and the vibe in the room and the
Yes.
enthusiasm and the positive affirmation and pride was absolutely palpable. It was so exciting.
That my WhatsApp channel for that alumni group is going off as we speak. And actually just before, I was in a room with 3 other alumni from the 40 under 40. And it really does bring people together. And I think actually having that social identity highlighted and realizing that these are your people, you can actually share your wins, you can share your concerns, you have some kind of baseline of common understanding. It's been invaluable. So I would absolutely say thank you for that recognition. But yeah, definitely was a strange one. I think when I first got the call, I was like, oh, is this a thing? Yes, this is my identity. Yes.
Yes, Wendy, over to you.
I'll kind of tell some stories from a different perspective, which you guys may or may not appreciate. So it took me quite a few years working on Wall Street to just appreciate that sometimes you can leverage people's misconceptions about you, right? So I actually started out working in the trading pits, where I'm 5'3", so I'm not tall enough to see over the screens. So I used to walk around in these like stiletto heels. It was the only way I can actually see what was going on. So people have certain misconceptions about me, but rather than like fighting against it, I realized they thought I was so dumb that they would just tell me exactly what they were doing. So it's just like, oh, well, that saves me a lot of trouble, right? So it's like, yeah, you can kind of have fun with these misconceptions, and like, why fight all the time? Sometimes it's better just go with the flow.
Yeah, nice. Isa.
So I see that technology has leveled up the field, because like people don't see you as a woman, or or a person of color or whatever. They only see the work that you do, right? So it's a way for you to break through the doors, so that people just, oh, I heard you did this, and then they'll talk to you, and then all of a sudden they'll be like I had this one incident where the people said, oh, you look very young. How old are you? And then when I told them my age, oh, you're quite old. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I should be offended or not. First they tell me I'm too young, then they tell me I'm too old. But then it got me through the door, right? So it got me through the door, and then it's just do not feel offended about this kind of stuff. Like, especially when you're in Malaysia, it takes the gender roles are a little bit stricter, I guess. So it takes time. So even when we do our work with micro entrepreneurs, we also want to find a way where we can get the men to be our agents of change. We need to get them to feel like they are also validated, that they are also needed, because we want to not just grow the woman, but also the family, and have everyone come in to support, because we're quite a traditional country, so there are traditional roles that people play. So you can't like just push the woman forward, because it might break the family structure. So I mean, we don't have the solution.
Make it look like it was an idea in the first place.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, because I think what's really needed is for them to support their women, for them to be the agents of change, because they have girls growing up, right? They have sisters, they have mothers who are doing incredible things, right? And how great it would be for our men to truly feel proud of us and support us. That's the kind of thing that we're going for. Kind of thing, because it's different challenges compared to Australia, I think. So
thank you. Now I've got two more questions. I'm actually, this is going to be one about AI in general. Very hot topic. A lot of criticism that AI trained, that there's biased information, and that it then through bias produces human biases in data that comes out. How can businesses and governments work together to ensure major technological developments also help to progress equality? Maybe you want to start with that, Jeanette?
Yeah, just on this, and thanks for the question. I just think at the end of the day, it's about what's the alignment of incentives, right? Is there actually incentive for industry to make that focus? And there should be, because it should be coming from the leadership and the team inside the company. But then is there a role for government perhaps to kind of line up some incentives as well, and sort of set some, whether it's guardrails or boundaries? But I just, I think if people working in technology can start to connect their personal authentic values to the work that they're delivering and start to have the empowerment to advocate for those values inside the companies they work for, I feel like we'll be a lot further along the pathway to having a safer and less biased system like AI. So, I mean, I think where we are at the moment, it's a really pivotal point, and it's definitely a problem bigger than all of us. But yeah, I think it's incentives alignment, and I think it's humans connecting to their personal values and being advocates for those inside their businesses. Thanks.
And if I may add, I think it's also the data collection part, right? So people don't collect enough data, and that's why the data out there is biased, you know, because you're not looking at it from a gender lens. So you have to like figure out what makes sense, and then how can we add on to that data, and everybody has to do their part in creating enough data. Like in Malaysia, we don't know how many women entrepreneurs there are out there because there's no data on that. You know, so that kind of stuff. So somebody has to do it, and somebody has to go look at it. So it could be an NGO, it could be the government. So just that understanding that the gender lens needs to be everywhere. Okay, go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, that's a whole of society enterprise. Wendy, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, from our perspective, when we're kind of trying to implement models, one thing that's kind of interesting is that even when we have female engineers or female product managers, like it's kind of strange, like all sorts of weird biases kind of creep into the way that you code, right? So I'll give you guys a really funny, weird example. So one of our coders based out of one of the Asian countries, they hard coded something in our systems that assumes the average height, even in Australia, like the average eye height is like 150 cm, which we know is just like not true. So it's kind of strange. Like as we're actually having a larger and larger AI team, we kind of have to tell people not just about gender biases or like, you know, background biases. It's just like, what other general biases do you have? It's not something that can be done in like one training session. That's what I'm discovering. So like even myself, I don't even know how to propagate this against the organization, but something that we're definitely thinking about.
Thank you. We've got another 10 minutes or so. There's a question here from Tennille Bentley. How, I think we've kind of touched on this a bit in our previous discussion. How do you ensure with all the technology that you manage a healthy balance where you aren't completely plugged in? Wendy.
Oh, do I seem like I have the worst problem out of everyone?
You know, you're having to be persuaded to be torn away from your computer, from your tech.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult one for me. In the organization, one of the reasons why I always volunteer to do such late shifts around the clock is because I know it's important for other people to decompress and to be away from their systems. So me as the founder, I feel like that's my responsibility. So my COO can go home to his family and to do everything else. Now for myself, on weekends, like I will always have one day where I just don't look, like I just leave my phone at home. Yeah, I have to say I'm probably not the best at it. It's definitely something I need to work on, but I've kind of chosen these few years in my life that's okay. But I understand that life is about stamina, right? It's not about short-term bursts. So it's something that I'll kind of work on after we get through the next stage of the company.
Thank you.
And then the next stage after that.
Yeah. No, I mean, we'll take turns, right? There's different people in the company too, but right now it's my turn.
How about you, Jeanette?
I would agree with Wendy. I'm plugged in all the time, and it's not ideal in terms of mental health and anxiety. And you could be just starting to wind down for the night and then see a message and it ruins your whole evening. So I just think there's a woman called Dr. Christy Goodwin. If you do actually want to look up some really great resources on this, she's a wonderful researcher, just published a book called Dear Digital, We Need to Talk. So if that's something of interest to you, I highly recommend Dr. Christy Goodwin's work. But yeah, I think, you know, when we map out the capabilities that we need for the future, one of them actually is self-care. And we deliberately put that on the list because we thought that there's no point having a generation of great leaders if they're all burnt out. So there's a level of self-care that I think everyone needs to figure out how to do for themselves. I mean, my self-care might involve still being plugged in. I don't know, maybe I've got a different style. So, but yeah, everyone's got to work it out for themselves.
Isa?
Yeah, so for me, I actually live a life where there's no internet at home. So I purposely choose not to get internet or cable TV. And then I had a child quite late in my life, like in my 40s, I got a child. And then he has now figured out that we are the only people in the world that does not have internet. Because even if he goes to his grandmother's house, there's internet. Right? But this is just a way for me to say that, you know, we need to disconnect because I'm in IT. And I just want to be able to do things like read a book, you know, this and that. So I think, and I encourage my child to do the same, even though he's like, every day negotiating with me, when can we get internet, so that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's basically that. I mean, I do have my data line, so I can still read my email and stuff like that. It's just that I don't want to be watching Netflix all the time.
Thank you. That's great modeling, I think. Look, I'm going to give you a double header to conclude, because the two last questions are both really related to your roles as CEOs of tech companies. One is about mentorship and sponsorship and what role that plays in ensuring equity within digital innovation. And the second is about company culture, how you foster a company culture that promotes gender equality. So I guess part of a company culture would be things like sponsorship and mentorship. So maybe if you'd like to comment on those two together. Jeanette, do you want to kick off?
Thanks for the questions, Gabby and Juliet. I mean, I'm a huge believer in mentorship and sponsorship for increasing participation and increasing the kinds of people that, the kinds of people that work in tech and build technology. I look at it almost like the surface space of somebody's career. How many amazing other humans and opportunities can that person be exposed to on a surface space? And every mentor adds to that. I also see a mentorship as being the only form of time travel, right? You can kind of see into the future what could be and then apply it to your current life. So definitely something we encourage at HEX and that we do as part of our programs as well. In terms of stuff that we do to foster the culture that promotes, you know what? I'm not sure if I could name like 5 key things we do, but but we do focus on language a lot. We make sure that we are using inclusive language wherever possible. So I think that little micro things like that make a big difference. I think we also, by nature of being a woman founder, I think that does attract a different, maybe you seem more approachable to certain talents. So we've got a really great women leadership team. Actually, we only have one straight white guy in our tech company, and he's very lonely. I probably shouldn't say that, but he's there. But we also just put ourselves out there, and we speak loudly about our values. So we talk about diversity, we say it in public, and I think that if you're living authentically as a company and as a founder, you'll magnetize talent to you.
Isa?
So for me, I would say it's giving a chance. I mean, stepping out of the way, because I think sometimes, as a founder, you tend to like get in everybody's way, and then you find out that, if you just let them do things, they can do it far better than you. So I think that is a lot of effort for me to like step back and let somebody handle it. So that kind of thing. So it takes time to learn that. And also I try to like because we're just a small company, and we don't pay that much anyway, because like being a small company, but I do give them the flexibility of doing what they want and also coming in when they want. So we have truly flexible hours. And because like some people have kids, some people have cats, so if they needed to come in later, so it's no big deal to me, right? Come in when you can, work when you can. So this is the kind of culture that we want, where you're free to set what you want to do, and then you're free to find which seat you want to sit in, do whatever that you want, so that kind of stuff, as long as the job gets done. Because at the end of the day, what we deliver to our customers is what matters. And I think advice to myself is just try to stand out of the way, when you see someone doing really good things.
Thanks. Wendy?
Kind of touching on a discussion topic from earlier, we tend to focus on equity rather than equality. So we recognize that everyone needs a slightly different set of support to succeed. Like I was saying, sometimes people need to feel comfortable enough to say that they need certain days off or certain hours off, or they can't commit to taking over a certain client because like that client likes to call on weekends. So it's just about recognizing that everyone's excellent in a different way. So if you deserve to be in the company and, like if you're sitting in that chair, you do. So it's that emotional safety, that like just general safety to speak up on what you need to be successful. So I think that's kind of that's like, as a startup, there's only certain things you can do. There's a limit to how much energy everyone has. So that's kind of where we focus our efforts to be inclusive. Just focus on equity.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Can I just add super quickly to that? Because it's so funny that to hear that point, Wendy, because I 100% agree with you. But I think I didn't think about remote work, flexibility, like all that as even a thing that we do, because I think that should be the default. And I think that any company that's looking to attract great inclusive talent needs to have those policies, like you do as well. And I think the other thing around, the safety, that's a role that we can play as leaders, is actually if we're openly taking our leave or we're openly doing things in front of others, that it helps to build that culture. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't even, my brain was just like, yeah, obviously remote work and flexibility. But yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, you walk the walk and talk the talk. All right, look, thank you. I think that is a really nice conclusion to this panel, and I can just it was in the chat before, but somebody said, "What an awesome panel! What a fantastic discussion group!" So I can only really reflect that sentiment and say thank you all, Jeanette, Wendy, Isa, for your insights, for your frankness, for being awesome women in tech. And it's been a very, very enjoyable discussion. And we very much look forward to inviting you to other future such panels. We just, I don't know why I'm mentioning this, because we're completely sold out, but we do actually have a panel about the role of GPT chat and AI in language learning and in cultural capability on the 22nd of March, which addresses some of the things that we talked about today. So AsiaLink will continue to look at some of these themes about the role of tech, not only in gender equity terms, but more generally for our community and society. So looking forward to hearing that. We've got here a little slide up for you to have a look if you'd like to contact us on a number of fronts. And also, please don't forget to give us some feedback for this session, because we love to get your feedback, all the people that have been in the audience today, and to get any kind of recommendations for how we can do things better. So thank you to all of you for your wonderful insights and for the time that you took today. And enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and until the next time. And thank you to the audience for all your